Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got an exceptionally interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the new Vosteed Psyop. What is so interesting about that knife? Oh, I get it. It's a button-operated liner lock. No, actually, it's more of a button-operated compression lock. Since the compression, I mean, they don't call it that. They call it a top liner lock. But the way that that piece of steel engages with the tang is way more similar to the Spyderco compression lock, which, by the way, as far as I understand, the patent ended. This knife, the existence of this knife is definitely, I think kind of the start of something that we're going to see, much like the age of, when the Axis lock was exclusive to just Benchmade knives. Once that patent ended, we started seeing it on everything, which actually ended up spawning a whole bunch of incredible knife designs that we just couldn't really get until that happened. So I think that we're going to start seeing kind of the same thing here. And this is an incredible example of, I think, proper execution of this locking system. It works really well, and I'm really excited about it. Thank you so much to Vosteed for sending this in for me to take a look at. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex, and at least for the time being on TikTok at _metal_complex. I will link this knife in the description. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. It is not an inexpensive knife, but I do find it to be appropriately priced. So the locking system right off the bat, instead of taking the entire thing apart, right, or trying to peek in right here, which you can kind of see what's happening, that button is moving that lock in and out of a slot on the tang, right? It looks like it might just be contacting a surface, much like, what do we have here? Here's the Ontario wrap. Liner lock, right? You just have the lock and it moves away from the tang, and it kind of looks like it's the same thing that's happening, it's just more towards the rear. Actually, much the same case as a compression lock. This system has a tab that slides into a slot in the blade. Here, I drew a picture. That's a terrible picture. But this is the tang of the blade, the pivot, and the tab that's locking is sliding into this area here, which means it should be contacting surfaces on all sides. The end result of that is I guess it's a type of liner lock. It ends up being very secure. I'm happy with that because, button operation has always been fun. Being able to push a button and disengage the knife, right? The problem is that when you're using a plunge lock, the geometry is a bit tricky to get secure, right? They're trying to make it to where it's easy to manipulate. It's not sticky, but at the same time, it's secure enough that it's locking the blade out. That's proven to be kind of tricky. A lot of lock failures occur with plunge lock style button locks. So not to say that failures don't occur with other types of locks, including liner locks, right? Failures can occur with any lock, but this appears to be a substantially more secure system, and you get the satisfaction of operating it via a button. It still has its disadvantages, but I do like this. Vosteed, you guys don't need me to tell you this. You definitely need to make more knives in this style, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can execute this style of lock. Obviously, Spyderco has the tab on the back, and I'm sure that we'll find, a ton of different creative ways for this to work with other companies experimenting with this lock. But anyways, I just wanted to kind of explain that right off the bat. That's something I missed in the unboxing, but then again, that's part of the point of the unboxings is I learn from you guys in the unboxings, and then in the reviews, I can provide the correct information to anybody who wants the correct information. But yeah, I really like that locking system, and this does work very, very well. So anyways, let's go ahead and get a measurement of this knife. The overall length of the Psyop coming in at about 8 inches. Blade length is coming in at 3.35. Cutting edge is coming in at about 3 inches. How about some size comparisons? Any custom skills you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others, up against the AD10 and the AD20.5. This is a full-size knife, so it's going to be full-size by my definition, 8 inches. But it is definitely bigger than knives like the AD 20.5, not quite as long or robust as the AD 10. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? Closer to the size of the PM2, definitely larger than the Para 3. And then finally up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. There you go. How's the action? Well, you kind of saw me using it. You push the button and it falls, right? There's definitely a spot where you can feel the lock sliding out of the way of the tang, right? And then right when you get that detent ball out of the way, so right here, feels like it wants to start falling, and you can see it's getting stuck on the detent ball. Then you push a little more and it falls. So you do have to be pretty deliberate, but there is definitely, a potential hang-up spot, but it's very minor. It's incredibly minor. The first time you feel it, you go, oh, okay, I see what's happening, and then you just push it more, right? It's not a lot of travel for the button, and ultimately the way that the lock operates, I think, is worth that little, every time I pick it up, I just get more of the meat of my finger on that button and just push it harder, and it works. It doesn't feel gritty. There's no grittiness or anything like that. It's just that little ledge is where the detent ball is just getting stuck if you don't push it hard enough. But it's a weird type of, it's not really double clutch. It's just a weird spot. I'm wondering, Spyderco knives have it too. If you don't push the compression lock in far enough, it gets stuck right there on the detent ball. So I don't even, it's not even, I've never even felt, I've never been something that I was aware of to complain about, right? I think it's just the nature of the beast, right? I'm pointing it out as a thing that will occur probably the first time you manipulate it. But the hole here, the thing you use to manipulate the blade from the closed position is in a great spot. You have full access, very, very Spyderco-like, reverse flickiness. I mean, it's hardly the first time that a blade has had a hole in it for deployment. This is my preferred means of deployment. I love the big oval shape or the holes that comes from Spyderco knives. I've just really loved the ease of manipulation there, especially if I do end up wearing gloves. The nice thing about that hole is it's much easier to get a gloved finger in there. Boy, there's a lot of really dangerous the way that I'm saying, there's no way to talk about this type of stuff without sounding slightly suggestive. So get your minds out of the gutter. But if you have a gloved finger and you're trying to get after that hole, I'm a child. It can still be easy to do, right? Which is nice. Really, really great. And the detent strength is also nice on this too. Yeah, it's a nice, I call it about a medium detent, but you get that full satisfactory flip. The front flipping action, I don't really care. I'll never use it on this knife. It's not the most ideal front flipper I've ever, handled, but I think it's fine. You can still do that sort of side of the finger thing if you want to, but just manipulating it as you would a normal knife is fantastic. It just feels exactly the way that it should. So yeah, let's go ahead and do carry profile thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see here it's just about as thick. Length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. It's a little smaller than the PM2, a little bigger than the Para 3, not quite as tall as either. It doesn't feel clunky or heavy, but it is made out of titanium and Elmax. The lock itself and the supporting liners are steel, and I know that will be magnetic. Yeah. Pocket clip, the frame is titanium. I would venture to guess the reason they've set it up this way is they plan to release versions of it that do not have titanium and Elmax. Vosteed, I guarantee you, is way ahead. A version of this that is in G10 or micarta and 14C28N is almost certainly in the works, right? But it's just so they don't have to recreate the system to accommodate for a less expensive frame, right? This way they can just the same liners and locking things. They just keep making the same ones. And they just put different scales on. That would be my guess, right? Yeah, that's the materials we have for this guy. We're going to come back to the Elmax here, but I do like the Elmax composition. I think it's great. It's definitely a premium steel, and it's made by Bowler, same folks who make M390. So anyways, titanium, steel, and steel. We have a titanium pocket clip and a titanium backspacer. The weight on this guy, memento, is 4.6 ounces, so it's a little bit on the heavier side, but not massive. I didn't really. This is very, typical in terms of the size of knives size and weight of knives that I carry. So it didn't really bother me. It might bother you. It just depends on what you're carrying. But overall, very good, very positive experience. Not a difficult knife to carry. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. So what, they were buried. What size fasteners here? Most likely T8 across the board. That's what it looks like to me. Yeah, we're going to go, looks like a T8 pivot here, and then we got two T8 fasteners. There is nothing complicated about compression lock style knives. This has to be a very similar experience to Spyderco knives outside of having to deal with things like the lanyard barrel, which is actually a nightmare. This should be very similar. The way that I keep bringing up Spyderco knives, I'm acting as if this is like this evolutionary duplicate or copy. It's not. It's just there's a lot of similarities here. And outside, like if we're talking about the Shaman, for example, that's a very easy knife to disassemble. This will probably be similar. Nice size fasteners, nothing complicated on the inside, right? It's not like taking apart an axis lock knife. You don't have to jump through those extra hoops or anything. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. Let's see here. Oh, blade stock thickness. Let's do that real quick, and then we'll go jump into the meat and potatoes. Alrighty. Blade stock thickness is coming in at, it looks like 132 thousandths. Let's make sure. People always tell me, it's the same, the tape is creating extra thickness. If I just squeeze it a little bit, I shouldn't even have brought that up. Now people are going to criticize it. It gets the correct measurement, or very close. 135 thousandths. So there you go. Middle of the road, 135 thousandths. Anyways, a couple of different variations of this knife, and they do list this as DLC. If you watched my unboxing, I tried to scratch the blade with a steel bit, assuming that if it was actual DLC, because this is the chalky stuff and not the shiny stuff, that we would get that sort of powdered tracing, which is not a scratch. It's just like the pieces, like the powdered bits of the bit being smashed against the surface. It's not quite as chalky as like a Spyderco DLC. My honest guess was that it was not DLC, and it was just listed that way. The blade did not scratch. As far as I can tell, this is DLC. And if you don't know, when it comes to coatings, the basic levels are garbage or paint, which is like, you get on Amazon and you find like the coolest, law enforcement / rescue knife, Tanto, black serrated, seatbelt cutter, glass breaker, and it's like $23.95. Yeah, that'd be paint on the knife. Nothing special. And then you kind of, there's a lot of like weird stuff in between. Titanium nitro's form of PVD, I guess, and you got all these different weird like coatings. I think a lot more of the quality stuff. Most people would agree that it's Cerakote, right? Pretty good. Can be a lot of different colors. It's great. PVD, considered generally better, right? More durable than Cerakote. Will still scratch. And then miles ahead is DLC. Super durable, super scratch resistant, adds corrosion resistance, right? Don't want to get into the meat and potatoes of that, but this appears to be DLC. The simplest way to test it is take something like a steel bit or the blade of another knife and try to scratch it. And if you have marks that cannot be wiped off, then it's probably not DLC. But if you can wipe the marks off, right, at least for the most part, it's probably DLC. So this is not scratching up. If you didn't know, the blade of the Hogue Ritter is in fact steel. M390, in fact. So yeah, no, it appears to be actual DLC. I would assume the same as for the scales, right? You can see a little bit of like the marks there that are showing up, but are they still there after trying to clean it off? Maybe a little bit. It could be that it appears that the scale is actually easier to scratch than the blade. So maybe this is different. I don't know. But using the exact same thing to touch this versus the blade seems to be way more durable. So anyways, but yeah. So that's good to know. Anyways, the overall profile of this, I think, is very good. It feels very ergonomic. This standard position right here is pretty good. The pocket clip is really long. Really wish the pocket clip was back just a bit, but not the worst, right? It's just like the bill of the clip is kind of right here, which bothers me. Might not bother you. At least it's milled and knocked down, not sharp at the edges, right? Would have been nice to have it a little bit back here. As far as, ergonomics go, the standard grip, pretty good. Choked up a little bit better. I think that's pretty comfortable, and it scoots the pocket clip back. You can even choke up further, which is all right, but it's made less comfortable than this middle position by this ledge right here. I really wish that this curvature had just like the frame had followed the natural curvature right there, and that would have made it a lot more comfortable in this choke up position, but it's not bad. The jimping definitely complements the index finger position here, and in the most forward position, that feels really good. Vosteed and the branding and everything right there. Design, logo, all of that. Not too in your face. The blade is good, pretty generic, sort of drop point blade with the swedge here. The grind is, I'd say reasonably, it's not like laser thin, but it's reasonably thin, right? Good edge there. The LMAX steel, I love the LMAX composition. It's, I guess you could kind of, in a really lazy way, you could describe it somewhere between S35VN and M390. It is powder formed, stainless. It's tougher than M390, but doesn't have quite the same potential for edge retention, but it's very corrosion resistant. The Vosteed website lists it as 60 plus or minus 2. That is a wide range for LMAX. 62 LMAX is great. 58 LMAX is bad. Every composition has a different optimal range, and LMAX's optimal range is similar to M390. So a lot of new people, I think, get confused when so many reviewers are like making vomiting noises at like 59 or lower, and they're giving huge thumbs up to like the 60 plus, and it's not the same for every steel. When it comes to LMAX, though, I don't like to see numbers below 60, same as M390. You also don't want it too hard, but that plus or minus 2 is a crazy huge range. I don't think LMAX is going to shine at all at 58 or 59, and I think it starts to shine, it starts to be okay around 60 from what I understand. So that is a huge bummer. Because that's a pretty, if you're thinking like, what's the big deal? It's just a couple of points up or down. Every point on that scale has an exponential effect on the blade's performance. And when you're considering a composition like LMAX, that the balance massively benefits from being above 59, right? All you're doing is just taking a steel that should be harder and making it softer, right? So you don't want that. So it's a pretty big dice roll on what type of performance you're going to get out of the blade. I think Vosteed, if you're going to use materials like LMAX, you need to bring that range up. I would eliminate the possibility of it going below 60. And I understand that adding a coating to it, that's probably why they do it like that. The uncoated versions of these blades probably have the higher potential, and the coated versions have the lower potential. But I would make it so that even your coated versions are not dropping below 60. That's just my 2 cents, but people don't like to see that wide of a range. If that is the case, you should clarify. It should be a specific listing under each variation of the knife, kind of like what WE does when they have those readouts. But anyways, just to let you guys know. Yeah, I didn't notice any this got a light workout. This got like a cardboard workout, which is generally about as hard. I'm a design reviewer, so I don't take these things out and like chop trees down with them or anything. But when a blade is really, really soft and you cut cardboard for a little bit, you definitely notice the edge like becoming fatigued very easily. This one didn't do that, right? So maybe I got a little lucky with this one. I don't know. If you end up with like a 58 LMAX blades especially, you would notice that on cardboard, like not after a pretty short time. On the other hand, if you had an LMAX blade that was heat treated to 62, you could cut for substantially longer, and the blade would, act as if you had barely used it at all, right? Cutting cardboard. So anyways, very generic way of explaining that. But I would like to I would like to see that range higher all the way around. Anyways, the rest of the knife is pretty straightforward. I do like that they added a little texturing in here and made a little border, because this would otherwise be super plain and it would look like everything else. Kind of like the matte bronze and black look. That's also pretty nice. There's a lanyard hole right here, which is fine for lanyard people. We have a little generic backspacer, also fine. No mounting position for lefties. Sorry, lefties. Vosteed definitely, as you move forward with this, if you continue using locking systems like this, consider left-handed people. I think that's obviously very important. The pocket clip is milled. Like I said, it rides on the texturing, but I didn't ever have a problem with it. The tension on, honestly, it's pretty, like, not super high tension. In and out of the pocket was very easy. The texturing is not aggressive enough that I would be worried about it, right? The stop pin is located in its traditional spot right here. There's no blade play, up, down, left, or right. That's really cool to see on the compression. Like this, I keep calling it a compression lock. Their top liner lock, or whatever they're calling it. They got that figured out. They got it secure. And they got it to operate without excess stickiness or anything. I mean, it just is a really good execution of this locking system, and that's nice because these are very reliable locking systems. It's not going to be as strong as the cold steel triad lock, but 99.9999999% of the time, you do not need that much strength. I mean, you will break every other part of the knife before you break the triad lock, in which case the triad lock is no longer serving any function. So when it comes to pocket knives and what you would reasonably expect from them, I would say that a compression lock style knife is probably still more than you need. But it's just very secure. For the most part, you can use this knife, and even if you are, being a responsible knife user, right? If you get into a situation where the blade gets wedged and you have to wrench it backwards or sideways, that multi-directional pressure, you have much less of a risk of the blade disengaging, which is great because, this is a folding knife. So they can all disengage, right? Under the right circumstances. I like this. I want to see this more often with it being a button operated compression lock. I think the idea of keeping this button way back here and as skinny as possible, I think the idea there is probably so that while you're using it, because this is a right hand only knife, while you're using it, your fingers are not on, in most circumstances, are not right on top of that button, right? It takes quite the push to disengage it, but if your hands are right on top of it, you could disengage it, right? So I think that's kind of cool. The benefit of a compression lock that operates from the spine means that it doesn't matter where you're not going to disengage the lock from pushing on it, right? So I don't know. I mean, they could have made this a tab if they wanted to. I don't think there's a problem with the button, right? If you are left-handed and you're like, well, I'll just buy it and carry it in my left pocket upside down, or I'll carry it in my right pocket and use it with my left hand. If you squeeze hard enough in just the right spot, you can disengage it because of where your hand is, right? Right-handed people, got your palm over here and your fingers are over here. They're not naturally falling right on top of that button. So this is very specifically designed for right-handed people. So left-handed people be cognizant of that. But as long as you're not pushing on that button, I don't think that's going to disengage. I mean, that's in there. That's pretty cool. I like this. My biggest issue is how they're heat treating the LMAX, right? If you're going to use these steels and you're going to offer coated and uncoated versions, great. But we still got to have like the appropriate numbers for the steel. I don't know, I've not seen the data sheet for LMAX, but I highly doubt 58 is in the recommended zone, right? So yeah, I want all the advertised horsepower for the engine here, so to speak. So this is really cool. I love the lock. I think it's great. I hope that Vosteed and other companies do this style of lock. It's obviously a very good locking system for a pocket knife. It's very easy to manipulate, and you have options for how to manipulate it. I mean, Spyderco's done flippers with compression locks, right? You've got button operated compression locks, tab operated compression. I think it's really cool. I really like this knife. I love the knife. I don't like the heat treat. But that's pretty much it. That being said, $250. Is that an appropriate price tag? I think so, right? Save for the dice roll on the heat treat. Generally speaking, for people shopping at this price point, I think this is pretty cool and pretty competitive. If you look at that price point and you're like, yeah, great, I believe you that it's worth it. It's really nice materials. I'm not spending $250 on a pocket knife. Don't worry. I bet you anything, Vosteed comes out with a budget version of this. So you just wait for it. In any case, recommendable knife, generally speaking. Just be aware of the plus or minus on the HRC. That's going to be pretty much it. I will link this knife down in the description. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and at least for the time being on TikTok at _metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do of course have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.